Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying Season 1 thus far. Estella and Umeko are out there, and people are finally getting to test them out, and the reception from what I've seen has been, well, let's say mixed. In fact, I really disliked her in the beta, and loved her in the alpha, but how does Estella stack up now in the official release? Let's get into it. Estella is the newest Solar Offensive Mythic Lightbearer specializing in summons and debuffs at medium range. Her weapons include pulse rifles and machine guns, putting her in the rapid fire category of weapons. Taking a look at her kit, her signature ability One Misfortune's Guide allows her to front load some damage on an enemy while marking them and inflicting misfortune. Misfortune is a debuff that lowers the target's damage resist, causing them to take 35% more damage from summons and causing summons to aggro that specific target. It also inflicts 7 stacks of corruption, which prevents enemies inflicted with it from healing and lowers their damage resistance to player damage. Her second ability, Bewitched Illusion, is her primary summon ability, summoning a sprite to fight enemies on its own. It scales on power level system between 1 and 3 based on the amount of corruption that Estella's accumulated. Corruption can be gained by attacking enemies with weapons. The damage numbers don't matter, as it's built with hits, not damage numbers. This makes rapid fire weapons a massive boon for her kit. However, it is worth noting that there's a hard cap at 20 times per second as well, though it's pretty difficult to cap it out in the current sandbox, so higher Bewitched Illusions deal higher damage to enemies. Estella has 3 weapon traits: Calamitous, Pandemic, Dream Aid, and Focused Fire, as well as her weapon mastery skill Distorted Desires. For the sake of time, I'll try to summarize the effects of these as best I can. Trait 1 causes enemies to spread misfortune to other enemies within a 10-meter radius, dealing damage and inflicting misfortune, but reduces duration by 2 seconds for each spread to the floor of 4 seconds, up to 5 times. Dream Aid buffs interactions with Estella's super, causing misfortune countdowns to be paused and corruption to be acquired 80% more efficiently while the Violent Reverie is deployed. And the final trait buffs her signature 1 ability, stating when ability 1 is cast, any of the illusions on the field generated with ability 2 will fire 3 breaths of temptation at the marked target. Her weapon mastery introduced a new verb called Accident, which is essentially an additional instance of damage applied to debuffed enemies. Enemies affected by misfortune will take accident damage, dealing a base of 748 solar damage, and granting Estella 5 corruption stacks after hitting the target with 11 weapon shots. If the target is then defeated with misfortune, Estella gains corruption equal to 7 times the number of accidents that have affected the target prior to defeat, making her really strong for single target DPS and ability looping. Lastly is her super, Violent Reverie. If you've ever played Destiny 2, think back to 1000 Voices, because that's basically what this is. Estella summons the Violent Reverie to attack enemies. The Reverie fires a continuous, high-damaging, contaminating beam at enemies and is a major source of high DPS in Estella's kit. Alright, so we know her weapons and her kit, how it all interplays. Let's talk about her artifact setup. There are a number of items that will determine your ideal artifact setup, but for the purposes of this video, I'm assuming we're discussing a T0 character. Her T6 is quite powerful, making her into a machine, but the investment required means that most people won't reach that level without an insane amount of luck or money. Her T0 is still good numbers-wise, and her T1 isn't necessarily all that important. Her kit interplays with itself, with summons being her primary damage source. With that, it stands to reason that artifacts that empower summons would stand out as good choices for Estella. My initial build utilizes Nourishing Pact, which restores 16% health when summoning, Ring of Conversion, which creates an overshield from overflow healing granted by the wielder's ability, Bellicose Pact, which increases your summon's damage, and Resonating Pact, which generates additional damage for summons when they attack the same target as the user. That's my build for most team-based activities, but for solo activities like the Expanse, I tend to lean a bit more into survivability. Warding Pact, Ring of Safeguarding, Courageous Planetismal, and Inverted Vengeance work great to give you an edge on that front. Warding Pact reduces your damage taken by 8.79% for each summon on the field up to a max of 3, while Safeguarding grants an overshield equal to 36% of the user's max health when their shield's broken. Courageous Planetismal grants a damage increase for casting any ability, which will be happening a lot with Estella's kit, and Inverted Vengeance gives you a scaling damage buff while shielded up to 16% max. To be viable with this build though, you have to get comfortable with trying to use her abilities to keep 2 to 3 summons on the field at a time. The further up her talent tree you go, the more viable and potent this build becomes, but if you're like me and had to go to pity to pull Estella, you aren't going to be dumping more resources into pulling additional copies. My first build will work more than fine. In terms of weapons, her best in slot right now is the Fury's 3 exotic pulse rifle. In the alpha, it was bad juju, and if that gun makes a return this season, hint hint NetEase, there's little doubt that it'll be a major part of her kit. Alternatively, if you're looking for a mythic option, the Del 2 Sweet Ears is a 450 4-burst pulse rifle that fits really well here. Estella's kit is based on weapon hits and not weapon damage, so rapid fire and fast firing weapons are the play to optimize her abilities and corruption gain. Solidarity paired with ensured yields is the best perk combo on that gun in terms of mythics, but my playstyle preference leans more towards Clown Cartridge and ensured yields for larger magazine plus higher damage potential. Since her kit is based around weapon hits, perks that overflow the magazine size allow for more corruption stacks, and faster firing weapons help build that charge even quicker in her gameplay loop. For her heavy, Scorched Earth is the best in slot mythic choice bar none due to its high 900 RPM rate of fire. In Column 1, Annihilation or Fraternity are fantastic choices, while Clepsydra works well in Column 2. I'll also make a personal recommendation for Eager Aspirant, as I think it's a slept-on perk that doesn't require precision to trigger its damage boost bonuses, though admittedly it does have diminishing returns lower in the magazine and time counter. Now that we've gotten the specifics out of the way, what do I think about Estella as a whole? Well, I can certainly say that her gameplay loop isn't for everyone. Her main source of damage doesn't stem from her weapon kit, it stems from her abilities and smart utilization of her resources. Her reliance on weapon hits instead of damage encourages players to choose softer hitting, faster firing options in order to build up corruption faster, which in turn allows more uptime for summons on the field and plays directly into her overall gameplay loop. So the build becomes build corruption stacks to ×3, misfortune enemies, summon illusions, build corruption to 1 or 2, summon illusions, misfortune enemies, build corruption, summon illusions, cycle repeats. This loop in and of itself is interesting, but its reliance on ability uptime can hinder some players. The final upgrade in her skill tree really changes things and elevates it to the next level as it causes passive generation of corruption to occur. With her T6, Estella will gain 2 corruption stacks per second in combat and 4 per second out of combat on top of weapon hits, and the base corruption granted by accident is actually buffed to 10 stacks. Her T2 and T3 are also useful, increasing the illusion's uptime and granting a self-destruction function to them, but again, nothing too earth-shattering. Running her at a talent 0 still presents a fun summon-type gameplay loop, but the limited options for her weapons leaves a lot to be desired. While the Fury's 3 is a great gun overall, its slow initial rate of fire hinders the gameplay loop somewhat. The goal of Estella is to build corruption stacks up as quickly as possible and pump out summons while providing supplementary damage with the weapons in her kit. And in a team comp, this can be where Estella shines and the Fury's 3 excels, especially with its C2 enhancement. But, as someone who played her in the alpha with bad juju, I just don't feel like the Fury's 3 meets that same level of synergy. There are a lot of characters with synergies with exotics that just work. Gwyn and Concerto, Sean Wei and the Toaster, Jotun, Ning Fei and Mahama Yuri, Wolf and the Smart Bomb, the list goes on. The Fury's is a really good gun. Bad Juju just worked really well in Estella's hands. So it's a situation where if you haven't had something, you may not know, but once you've had it, you know, and you can't walk that knowledge back. There's always the option of using your exotic in the other slot as well, opting for a heavy exotic instead. Gallows is a fantastic machine gun with a really solid perk and decent DPS output that only improves the further up its catalyst tree you climb, but at 450 rate of fire it means you'll be building less corruption stacks in a given period of time due to its slower fire rate. In addition, it takes 8 shots to trigger the Void Rockets, and from what I can tell in my testing, the Void Rocket impacts don't seem to build corruption stacks, only the 8th bullet when it's fired. The other exotic option is Heir Apparent. It fires at a 900 RPM like the Scorched Earth, but it has a bigger magazine and has to be spun up before firing. Spinning up the weapon while at full health grants an overshield though, so that's an added bonus, and its magazine of 200 makes it sound perfect for Estella. And in a lot of ways, it does really fit well. Its head and body damage are higher than Scorch, clocking in at 1303 and 1086 against 1027 and 814. Further, its catalyst adds effects that really power the weapon up substantially. Its C1 increases the shield's durability and reloads half the mag when the shield's broken, while its C2 and C3 give it escalating damage boosts the longer it's fired. So, where's the problem? It's ammo. It's got a max ammo value of 500, so that means at most you'll get 2.5 clips of ammo before running empty. This compares to the Scorched, which has a total of 425 ammo and 60 rounds in the mag for a total of 7 mags of ammo. Reload speed is comparable, but the issues with the fire rate is that you can burn through your ammo really quickly, and setting up with the gun can take some time since you gotta spin the barrel. But for boss damage phases or encounters, the weapon is a really solid choice if you opt to go that route, and with some investment, it'll really shine. There are additional pieces to mention with Estella's kit, including the 22-second uptime for her summons, and the fact that her summons can return some corruption stacks when they disappear that actively play into her gameplay loop and make her kit really engaging, but all in all, she's a really good ability and super-based DPS character. Her build requirements aren't outrageous, but her artifact setup will require some investment as she's one of the only summon-type characters in the game and the only solar one. Her talent tree offers some desirable upgrades, but she's still a solid character out of the box, provided you enjoy her gameplay loop and weapons kit. She's a great addition to the game that plays into a niche that hasn't been explored by any other character presently, and, in my opinion, without a doubt worth pulling and building for DPS-focused players. I personally enjoy the playstyle, and once the game has a 540 RPM pulse in it, or, bad juju, I think the picture will be complete. Until then, the Del 2 and Heir Apparent, or Furies and Scorched Earth combo will be sufficient, but hey, these are just my opinions. What do you all think? Comment down in the comments section below and let me know how you're liking Estella. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.